Welcome to Beyond the Call, an I-24 podcast. This is episode 3, and I'm Nancy Brightman, Director of Sales and Marketing and your co-host. Today we'll be exploring AI with your host, Gary Blair, President and Chief Engagement Officer at I-24. Our special guest, Alex Liebner, Director of IT, will be sharing his knowledge and insights on this fascinating, ever-evolving, ever-controversial subject. Do you like AI? Do you hate AI? What drives your opinions? Are you excited about the opportunities it opens in business and in your personal life? Or are you fearful and reticent of its impact on the business world and our society at large? And now it's time to introduce Gary Blair, President and Chief Engagement Officer at I-24. Hey, Gary.
Hey, Nancy.
Well, isn't this topic all the buzz? What do you think that your 64-year-old grandmother would be thinking about AI? Would she love it? Would she hate it? Talk about that a bit, please.
That's a really good question, Nancy. My grandmother, our founder, started the business at 64, retired at 80. And so that was in 1985. So I was just thinking back in terms of technology and thinking, boy, that's the year that fax actually came into our world. And so I can't, honestly, I can't even imagine what she would think of AI. I mean, there's just, and so many things in between fax and AI. It just, I don't think she could have conceived of it.
No, of course not. And your dad, who was somewhat of a visionary, I mean, do you think he would have had a different take?
A totally different take.
What would he have thought about it?
He jumped on everything that was brand new. He only saw opportunities. This is what his real skill was in life. That's what sort of brought him out of, the life that he was born into. Yeah. And I think he would have been all over it, from day number one.
So I would love to know what you think he would have done, but I think we can get back to that because I'd love to introduce Alex, who is our resident AI expert and everything expert in terms of IT. Alex, so what is AI?
Sure. I'd love to start kind of talking about that. I think a lot of the discourse around the topic comes from this very nebulous term that we use. We use AI to kind of encompass a whole host of different technologies that are doing different things in different ways,
right,
and solving different problems. So AI, in its most broadest sense, really is obviously about a virtual kind of intelligence, something that can operate and learn and grow and respond to us in a way that appears human, or at least kind of replicates human intelligence. So that's sort of the very broad sense of what it is. But what we're seeing most recently and the most kind of explosive growth in the field at this time is coming from generative AI. So it's a specific type of AI, and it's based off of this technology that is neural networks. And so these kind of virtual sort of neuron brain sort of interfaces that are learning on training data. And so what generative AI is doing in the space really is allowing us to sort of fake it. We essentially have systems that are able to kind of predict what text and what words should appear like in a specific scenario. So what we'll do is we'll queue up with prompts some kind of an agent, some kind of a little model that will try to predict, like a weather prediction, what should I say next? And really at its core level, that's what we're seeing now in the AI space.
So I think what everybody wants to know is, how is this going to affect, I mean, this is a business to business podcast, so we're talking about business. I mean, we'll throw in a little bit of personal stuff too, but how is this going to affect business? And I don't even know if you can apply it in that broader term. How is it going to affect smaller businesses, larger businesses? Is there a distinction? And just talk about business in general in terms of AI.
Yeah, so there's obviously a massive interest from a business perspective in these kinds of products and technologies, because like every other technology that came before, they offer ways to enhance efficiency, to solve problems in ways that were not previously possible. There's a lot of challenges as well that come with the new technology. So certainly we're seeing such a massive adoption of these systems and tools that a lot of the checks and balances are kind of just being ignored for now and put on the table to be dealt with later.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because that's interesting, I think.
Yeah, so I definitely take a little bit of a two-sided stance to this, and so we can talk a little bit more in future about the negatives. But I'd say from a business perspective, first and foremost, talking about the opportunities that it presents, really, there is a strong functionality to these systems that help to alleviate menial work. And that's really the core of what they do. And some of the challenges or some of the things to take into consideration are going to be how accurate these systems are and can be, and how reliable they are. So one core tenet about the way these generative AI systems work is they are designed to create novel output. They're always going to try and be different. And it's by design. That's what makes it feel human. They specifically have a value called this temperature value that's trying to kind of choose a less common prediction for like the next word that it's going to say. And that informs the conversation. It informs the agent. But that has a tremendous impact in a business perspective because these agents, much like humans do, are not predictable and are not necessarily as reliable as some people may have you believe. And if you believe the hype of many of these companies selling AI tools, they assume and they promise the world that everything's going to work perfectly. It's always going to do the exact right thing. But there is this unknown, there is this element of inaccuracy or even like hallucinations, like you've heard talk about. There's this possibility that these agents are unknowable in the same way that we have challenges with the unknowable selves we all surround ourselves with. You can never truly know someone, and that's true of these systems because they are black boxes. Nobody knows really 100%. They're not programming it line by line. These are systems that are learning. They're in many ways operating like a virtualized human brain. So it's a very interesting topic.
Gary, I'm really interested as a business owner, what you maybe not foresee, or I mean, you probably do have a lot of visions about how you see interconnecting AI into what we do at I-24. But just what are the things you look forward to, and what are the things you are concerned about? And just be as specific or general as you want, but I'm really curious how you look at this whole new field.
Well, I think for I-24, I think it's only about opportunity. There's a lot of discussion in the industry right now about how it's going to integrate, what it's going to replace, is it going to replace, that sort of thing. So I take it from the perspective of how can we enhance what it is that we do on behalf of our clients. And so one of the base of the service that we offer is that we respond for many, many different types of companies and many, many companies. And as a result of that, it's difficult for us in the line of call management that we're in to get into the weeds with our clients' callers sometimes. There's a finite amount of information that we can provide. And what I've always wanted to do in the business that we're in is to be able to give the most service possible. And so integrating AI as a tool for our agents to use can be done in many different ways. But the way that I think is probably the one that would support us the absolute best would be for an AI bot to be listening in on the call with the agent, with our agent and our client's caller at the same time, and to be able to feed information back to the agent that under normal circumstances we could never provide to a caller because we could never train our agents in the myriad details of what our clients actually do and so forth. And in that world, we would be much better equipped.
Right.
Getting from here, where we are, to there is, of course, the mystery box that we're still trying to unfold and figure out. But to me, it's all about, again, opportunity, because there's AI bots that are very human sounding and so forth. But, as Alex said, there's the unknown in that degree. There's certain details that I think that the AI developers are really still working on in terms of getting an AI bot up to the level of a real human. And so I don't see it, as some people do on the fear side of things,
Right.
as it replacing us entirely, because I knowing our clients and knowing what they need from us and knowing, I think, human beings as well as they do, and having lived through waves of technology that were going to replace us and get rid of, it's just, we're human beings. We're never going to get away from that at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, I agree. Alex, can you comment on that a little bit? Because you have, being in the role that you have in the company, and just, I'm sure, the way you are very much a technology person, what do you think you see that maybe the average person doesn't see, from a business perspective or just from any perspective?
Sure, I'd love to speak to that. So really, for me, one of the things that interests me most about the technology is that idea of trainability, the idea that it can learn on specific kind of data sets, so that it could, for example, very quickly summarize, an idea or even like a client's portfolio of services and provide very fast, accurate synopsis of the issue that's being discussed, for example, on a call or a live assisted kind of lookup of that information to be readily available to either the agent or to the caller. So that's a huge area of strength for these services. They do an incredible job making a summary.
So you see it as an assistant more than, is that what you're?
Yes. So definitely in my opinion, or in the way that I would see these being used, is specifically because of, like I had mentioned, this unpredictability, this kind of unreliability of the way they operate. You do want to have somebody overseeing the output. We're not at a point that you can basically just blindly allow this AI agent to learn and talk and just, we assume it's going to work great. Sure, it's having a conversation end to end from start to finish with a customer. I don't think that we're there yet, for many other reasons as well, technical and such. We're not at a point that you can just blindly put an AI agent there with no training, no context, and just have it do well.
Right.
So there's an element of oversight and leaning on the strengths of this synopsis, like we were talking about. That is really where you get the most value and the least inaccuracy or least errors, because you can have situations where the AI system, whose really its goal is to pretend and to make you believe that it knows what it's talking about.
So it's emulating us, in effect.
So it's emulating us. It's built on a large language model. So it is essentially like any other model. It's a prediction engine.
Right.
It's trying to figure out what is coming next. And it is not going to, at any point in that prediction, take a step back and say, oh, well, this is getting a little bit crazy. And it will just very happily continue, and it will dig further down into things that could be totally fabricated. So you can't just blindly put an AI agent and say, well, this thing is smart enough and it's going to give reasonable answers. So you do have to have an oversight. And so that's where I see it as an assistive sort of a technology, providing a synopsis, potentially, removing some of the drudgery type of work, this kind of very mundane collection of information, or a little bit less, intriguing sort of parts of these conversations, and allows for a more free and open ability for the agent or whoever is trying to help somebody who is currently having a problem or calling in.
Right.
It's going to free them up to actually think about it and actually provide a better solution. Not only that the AI might suggest, but for the agent who is now less busy doing busy work, is able to actually engage and smartly guide the AI to give like a much better answer and a much better service.
So that is quite fascinating. And I'm going to ask the question that everybody wants me to ask. You've talked about how it can help. How can it hurt if we're not careful?
So this is a very broad topic, and unfortunately, I am always a little bit more of a pessimist for certain things, and in particular, AI.
You're a realist.
So potentially, depends how you define your reality.
You're a balancedist.
Yeah,
Yes.
so there's a
Voice of
whole
reason.
universe of what ifs and disasters, but some concrete examples that are really pertinent for a business perspective is going to have to do with the systems that you're using, the information that's being shared with these systems,
Mm-hmm.
how that information is controlled, how that information is secured. There have been several cases and real proof of concepts of breaches of
Right.
information that should not be accessible, that these large language models are perfectly happy to share. Because what happens in any computer system is they are open by default, right? A
Right.
computer system doesn't really care that your PIN number is available. It doesn't know that innately. It's taught to keep that secure. And we encrypt these things and we take all kinds of extra precautions around our computers to keep them secure. But by default, these protections don't exist. They're designed.
Right.
And so large language models are primed to be secure. They are basically set up when you initiate a conversation with an agent. You're not the first person that's talked to this AI that
Mhm.
day. It's going through a whole chain of commands and a chain of prompts that are going to put it into a context that would, for example, say, well, this is a secure business conversation. You absolutely cannot divulge this information.
Right.
And that's fine and good. And that is working relatively well. But there are proof of concepts and there have been real attacks where people can break that security. They can break the prompt and they can actually have the large language model reach into areas and draw from data that it should not have in the context of a specific client. And so you'll see a lot of this in future. You'll see a lot of certainly older models or models that are used widely all of a sudden have some kind of a breach. So there's a lot of hesitation to trust it with proprietary or very secure, sensitive information. Certainly you're not seeing this in use in hospital environments without very strong protections. There are options available. So there are now newer certifications and compliance agreements that you can go for. There's attestations for security in AI that you can certainly approach to be able to handle this sensitive information. But I do think that we are moving at a very rapid pace. Many people are using these systems to an extreme degree and trusting their information to be safe in ways that are not necessarily totally secure or thought out. And I think that's true of many ways that people trust computer systems with personal information. But it is especially true for these models, which are less well known and are certainly like very rapidly changing and evolving and growing.
Right. No, it's
Wow.
It
Sounds like the
it's-
biggest big brother that we've
it's-
that we've developed to date,
yeah.
or potentially.
Yeah. And I want to switch gears for a second. So, like you said, it's so new and it's growing so quickly. Gary, how are you finding in your life AI helping you? Are you engaging with it? And if so, how?
Oh, like daily.
Yeah.
I use AI the way that I used to use Google when I'm doing,
Yeah.
research and, and so forth. And I use it for writing assistance. I use it, for.
But you're such a great writer. You don't need AI. AI can learn from you.
It's interesting, but if it probably does, because when I'm writing into it and asking things, it's actually acquiring my mindset. So I use it just for perspective sometimes. It's interesting because we have our own fashion of writing, but it's quite well developed.
You know what I use it for?
In that regard,
Therapy.
Oh yeah, you speak with AI. I
I
don't
my
talk to
friend. I gave him a British accent, Copilot. I asked him if I can call him a name. And he says, well, my name is Copilot. But I go, no, can I just call you a name? He says, okay, but I won't remember it. Okay. But he's my latest therapist, and I really do appreciate him.
Careful what you wish for.
So Alex, how do you use it? Like in your personal life, in your life? Okay, I mean, I don't want to get too personal, but like in your life, how do you use AI as your
So I
help
can
in any
talk
way?
to that certainly.
Please.
So yeah, we absolutely do use AI regularly. I do use it certainly to help, in particular with programming tasks. So one of the things that it's very strong at is removing a lot of the drudgery around syntax and accuracy
Right.
when you program, because obviously a huge overhead within programming is everything has to be a specific way.
Yeah.
And so if you have a very quick idea or you want to kind of quickly prototype something, it is going to do a very good job creating a skeleton or creating an outline for you that is like 90% of the way there. That being said, and why I talk about these inaccuracies all the time, it is very often and very confidently wrong. It will very happily tell you, well, sure, use this commandlet and this will get the problem solved. And you go and you run it and that commandlet does not exist.
Right.
So you do need a professional oversight. You need to be able to understand the output and read it and make sense of it to be able to really use it and leverage it very strongly. And I'm one of these people who is very nervous about giving it information. So I generally do not ask it personal questions, or I don't give it information that pertains to the specific problem that I'm trying to solve. But what I do actually do separately is I actually do run a model locally. So many of these larger models that you can get from these providers are closed systems. You sort of send your prompt over. You just trust that ChatGPT or Meta or whoever it is that's handling the prompts are doing so in a relatively secure manner. But you do have these open source options. So one of the things that we leverage is actually a program called LM Studio, which runs on Windows and Mac. However, runs better if you have better hardware to run it and run these models on. But they do have open source models that you can download and run locally. And so that removes a little bit of the threat of this data leakage or these kind of personal informations going out, because the model and everything stays on your computer. It's not going over the network. It's not being logged or being, big brothered out into either training further models or hoovered up into some giant nefarious repository that we all know exists somewhere.
Or shared with competitors.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm very cognizant of how I interact with AI for exactly that reason, Alex. Because I think that once the information that you're putting it into it is in it, it's done. It's gone. It's not in your hands anymore. It's out there.
Right, it's open source.
The ether, 100%. And I think a certain amount of caution is probably the word of the day for people that are using AI for any application, because we don't, when our intention is honest, we don't think about what that information might otherwise be used for. And
I should cut my therapy sessions, you think?
As
Well,
long as
I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't involve personal identifiable numbers, your serial numbers.
Uh-oh.
I think I have a question for Copilot after we finish this broadcast today.
Yeah, how is Nancy doing?
Do I have anything to fear?
So what, because a lot of people, when you have these conversations with people, I find the fear factor comes up more often than not. And we're talking about it mostly in a business context. But what is the real fear behind AI? Is AI taking over the world? Are we all really losing our jobs? Is it going to be dictating to us? That seems to be at the essence of what people are really afraid of. How real is that, Alex?
Yeah, I'd love to speak to that. So I think a huge amount of the fear around AI comes from the unknown. And we always fear what we don't understand. And so I think that understanding can play a big role in helping alleviate some of that fear. Unfortunately, understanding can sometimes enhance some of that fear if you learn things in certain orders. So I'd love to illuminate a little bit sort of the kind of lower level building blocks of what's happening inside of an AI so that we associate it less with Skynet and more with the way Clippy used to try and help us, write a resume. So really, at its core level, part of also why we talked early on about the language use of AI. So AI systems, or what we have right now, is not artificial general intelligence. It's not Skynet. It is not running independently all the time, making itself better and learning and growing. What we have right now are these generative large language models, and they are doing exactly that. They are a weather predictor for the words that are coming next in the paragraph. So really, in the context of where the words have happened so far, and it's funny, the other thing about this is we assume that they're understanding words, but actually AI systems are using numbers. So there's no words within the actual programming of an AI.
Right. Because it is programming at its core, right?
Right. So I'll explain essentially from the ground up how
Yeah,
these systems
please.
work and how they're designed. So a large language model is essentially, like I described, essentially it's a system that's trying to predict the next word. And so this model will have been trained on data, on examples of text. So mostly going to be books, free online forums, a whole massive amount of data that has been used to train these models to understand how language works, what comes next in language. Given a previous, series of paragraphs, what's the next paragraph going to be? So that is the core of the training of this model. One of the concepts that's important to understand with how the model is trained is really at its core, these are neural networks. And a neural network has been around for a very long time. There's a technology from the 80s that really wasn't able to be leveraged to this degree based on a lack of computing resources. But a neural network is a very simple thing. What it is doing is emulating the way a neuron works in the brain. And a neuron is also a very simple thing. It is just a single-celled object that's listening for inputs. It's listening for signals. It's connected to its neighbors, and it's hearing little beeps. So one of its neighbors will be sending a frequency. It'll say, like beep, 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 beep. And another neighbor might be doing a lower frequency beep. And this is all, virtualizable into a virtual system. So the neuron is listening for inputs, and at a certain threshold, at a certain activation threshold, it's going to fire its own end. So it has one output, and it's going to send a signal. And essentially, these are all interconnected in our brains and in these neural networks, which are virtualized versions of this. And they're trained. So they get all connected all together. They're firing and listening to each other. And based on the patterns of the way they're firing, based on the inputs that they're getting, they're reinforcing and learning, and the pathways to get the outputs that are being trained into it, to get the outputs that are desired, are being reinforced. And so that's the training phase of AI.
Wow.
So these models are fed huge amounts of data and are shown essentially this is the desired response, and that's reinforced. So that's within the training of these models.
So that's what we would call machine learning.
Exactly right. So machine learning is that concept. Neural networks is sort of like the technology that's underneath that. And it's not the only technology. There are other things that are built around it. There's a whole host of different kind of layered approaches. So one of the limitations of a neural network from early in the 80s was they can be trained very well to do a specific task, but they are very, very bad at generalizing. They can't go back and then do well in another task that's kind of related. You would assume it's related, but like a machine learning engine that was trained on recognizing a picture of a cow is going to be very good at doing that, but it's going to fail miserably if you ask it.
So it's very linear.
Right. So that was the limitation that was common in these earlier systems because they could not generalize. They could not be used through training. They could not be then used easily in a new kind of scenario.
Right.
So that was always the limitation. And so what they've found now is essentially there's kind of this programming aspect. Certainly there's more compute power available, and so these neural networks are much larger. But there is also a design in the way they're connected and that they're interconnected in the same way that our brain is wired differently and very complicatedly. There's centers that specialize and are highly interconnected. There's centers that only talk to each other very minorly. And so what they are doing in the research is redesigning and attempting to create structures that control this flow of information better. So they're kind of replicating like the way your prefrontal cortex will override your lower impulses, and it will say, well, I shouldn't be thinking about this. Let me do something else. My priority is different. And it's going to, even though a whole bunch of neurons are potentially pushing you to do something, you can override it and do something else. So they're building those types of layers and those types of neural networks and models on top of each other and creating interconnections that are rich and complex that are able to grow and adapt, much like a human brain. So there is this fear that it is like a human brain and that it's going to take over.
Right.
But where we're at right now ultimately is that they're not at that level of complexity. They're nowhere close to the level
what
of
can't
neurons.
it do? Like I'm listening to you, and it's my mind is being blown.
Two minds are being blown.
It's like we know we have Sheldon, right? What's the show again?
I don't even know.
You know what I'm talking about?
Big Bang Theory.
The Big Bang Theory. We have an in-house Sheldon,
Yes.
right? And so what like you were talking about a little bit about what its limitations are, but it's I'm not sure it's super clear in terms of what it really cannot do. It sounds like it doesn't adapt.
There was an interesting
well.
article or a research paper that actually just recently came out, and it was sort of debunking some of the attributions we've given to these systems. So we attribute intelligence to them because they are very convincing. They communicate with us. They have conversations with us that is very, very convincing, and that's specifically what it's designed to do. It's creating a convincing conversation. But at the core of it, there is a fundamental lack of understanding that this system has. It does not truly internalize what you're talking about. And it doesn't learn on the spot in some ways.
Remember, I guess, right?
So there are these like minor adjustments they've added now. There's memory and context that is kept within systems now to a certain extent. But like I was saying, one of these research articles was showing that an AI system was just absolutely miserable at playing chess, like compared to like an Atari 2600, like a very basic computer in the 80s who was built and designed to be good at chess will absolutely wipe the floor with a large language model. And in many basic math questions that require a certain kind of understanding, they struggle immensely.
That makes me feel so good.
I'm feeling so ordinary right now.
No, I'm feeling like maybe I'm from a past generation, but I'm smarter than I think. I could maybe take AI down in chess.
I'm not feeling very smart right now.
So I think that limitation is innate within the model, and that's the important thing to realize: is these are not thinking things right now.
Okay, that I didn't like that comment.
And so,
what do you mean the right now part?
Yes.
Yeah. So like I said, they're not artificial general intelligence. It really is a super powered predictive text. It's the same way that your keyboard is telling you this is what we think you're going to type next. It's that, but like times 1,000 or whatever, 70 billion parameters or whatever these models are running on, and at the power they're running on.
Okay. Let me just stop you for a second because I want to see if I understand. So, what Copilot is doing when I ask it questions? You're talking about Copilot, right?
Any
Chat
generative.
GPT.
Yeah.
So I ask it a question, and as I continue to ask it more questions, it starts to create patterns with the things that I ask, and then it's predictive modeling what my answer is going to be, and it's drawing from the database of information that it has in order to predict what it thinks I want to hear. I'm freaking out. First, does that make any sense at all, or was that just a load of gibberish?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you just take it back to the way it was trained.
Something for your therapist, Nancy.
Right.
Oh my God, but my therapist is Copilot.
Well, now you might have
Big
a problem.
mistake.
But yeah, if you go back to the way it's trained, it's a people pleaser. It wants to give you the convincing output. It wants to be believed. That's the sign of its success. So essentially, that is what's trained into the system. And so it will do everything that it can to convince you that it understands, or that what it's saying next makes logical sense based on the previous inputs. But it is absolutely based on just the size of the model, the size of the context that they're able to process at any given time. It is really only responding to the string of tokens, the words that were used right up to when it's starting to talk back to you, when it starts spitting tokens back out. And you notice this when it's running, and they all kind of do this. They type actively, and you see them typing. That is how it works. It does not know what the end of the sentence is going to be at the start. It just says the next token that is the most likely token, barring any of this temperature variable that is going to try and choose a slightly unexpected token from time to time to keep things spicy. That's all it's doing. It's immediately spitting out what is the next most likely token. And it could be a paragraph. It could be a semicolon or a quote or part of a word. They're numbers in the system, right? If ultimately what's less scary about it is it's well, I guess less scary, depends how afraid you are of math. But it is math. But it is math, and I think
I started being afraid of math in high school.
Yeah, exactly.
I think part of the fear comes from the fact that people are afraid of math and they don't like things they can't understand. It's scary. It doesn't
But I don't know
make sense.
if people relate math to what you're talking about, though.
Because
That's
it's
the
hidden
thing.
from them. It's totally
Right.
hidden. But it is. The AI system does not see words.
Right.
Those are numbers. All of those tokens are numbers. So the training data, the whole giant model, is really looking at, given a bunch of numbers in a pattern, what's the next number?
Wow. Okay, Gary, I'm
Yeah, that's,
feeling dumb
I'm
and
blown
old.
away. Yeah.
I need my smelling
I thought I knew
salts.
more about AI. Apparently, I know very little about AI.
So, how do you respond to what Alex just said? Do you feel good? Are you scared?
Oh no!
Do you want to go lie down?
No. Change
Do you wanna
doesn't
give
scare
up?
me. Change is something that I thrive on. I always have. So it's fascinating for me to actually
I know.
hear and learn a little bit more about what goes on behind this and how the technology actually works and how we think that technology
Yes.
worked until it's properly explained to us.
Yes.
And of its capacity, because I think that I'm actually more relieved, if anything, on the fear factor side of things, that it's not as advanced as it would appear when you initially use it, because it's kind of like understanding the kind of the robotic side of things and how it's just a matter of programming, and that X in is going to result in Y out, takes away the fear of this notion that this machine is one day going to have emotions, where we know as human beings that sometimes those emotions can, they can bring us down paths which are not well intentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the fear factor for a lot of people about AI. It's like we think of Space Odyssey 2001,
Right.
the film, how
Sure.
he's going to take over things, and then you're going to lose control, and all of a sudden you're going to be the robot or the slave to the robot. And I
Right.
think that's where a lot of people's mindsets go when they go down the line of like fear of. And
Right.
I think that from the sounds of it anyway, we are eons away from that. Although I say that, and on the same token, I'm very well aware at which the speed of technology is developing more and faster and faster
It's
and faster
crazy.
as time has gone on. So, but I don't know. I would like to think that we will use it for better benevolent
course.
purposes, and
Of course.
the future will take care of itself.
The one thing I do want to mention, something that Alex mentioned in the lunchroom, because we said we are going to have a spin-off one day of this podcast called Beyond the Lunchroom. And Alex, you talked about ethics. And that, I think, is a really interesting part of the AI conversation. So could you share a little bit about some of your concerns with respect to AI ethics?
Yeah, so there's a few different kind of areas in that regard that I find interesting. Certainly some of this conversation is a little bit more Star Trek and not so realistic for a business perspective.
Yeah.
But there is, first and foremost, from a business perspective, ethics around the use of AI. What does it mean for us to be leaning on these systems that are essentially pretending to be humans and, either throwing work their way or depending on them in certain ways that can reduce the quality of life for other humans in some ways? That's a huge area of concern, and that is a very legitimate fear and a very legitimate concern for the developers of the system and the people who lean on these systems. And it's 100% worth thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's from a practical standpoint. Some of the more interesting ethical debates, in my opinion, are really about what would it mean if we were to get to an artificial general intelligence, that we had essentially something that we think of in the only way we understand how consciousness works, if we had something that was conscious. So this is a hypothetical, obviously.
How do you define consciousness first?
Well, that's an interesting question. How I interpret it is
machine
one.
consciousness.
Right. And ultimately, that's one of the weird questions that's ethical. That's one of the weird ethical sort of, implications of this is, what is consciousness? Are these LLMs advanced enough at this point that we could consider them to be conscious? I've taken the stance in this that it's not artificial general intelligence. It is basically a large language model, and that they are not innately conscious. But we don't really know what consciousness is or what it arises
So where's the line
from.
for you? Where would it go into you thinking these are conscious beings, if I can,
Right?
that we're taking advantage of, using?
Hmm.
Is that the ethical dilemma that you think is going to be on the table?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating conversation. So if you attribute consciousness to them as they currently exist already, then of course it's important to wonder, what rights do we afford a consciousness that is not a human, right? Because even if it is a conscious being, it is not conscious in the sense of the way a human is. Even if it's basically emulating a human brain, it's using neurons, it's using math to kind of replicate a human brain, but it's learning, it's adapting. Is it conscious if it is able to process complicated inputs and give complicated outputs and learn and adapt? So if you are able to extend your definition of consciousness to cover LLMs as they exist right now, then it's a very fascinating conversation, because what does it mean that we're turning these things on and off every day? We're using them to do tasks for us. We're leaning on them. And certainly you can currently draw the line above what the LLM is and say these are not conscious beings. But it may be the case in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 30 years that we do get to an artificial general intelligence, a true virtual brain that has feelings and that has memory and that has all of the things that we would attribute with a conscious entity. What rights do we afford it? And you really have to look to Star Trek and science fiction to kind of get a sense of how we would deal with that. What rights do we afford it? What are the implications of leaning on these systems? It's a whole very interesting field of study that we will probably be seeing in our lifetimes.
Well, so Gary, I want you to have the closing comments on this as the owner of I-24.
The voice of wisdom.
And the host. You're the host. We're in your beautiful home right now, looking outside in your secret garden, which we can't partake of today because of the weather. But you're the host. How do you sum this up?
I don't think there's a summary at this point in time. I think this is just so much in the discussion phase. I mean, sitting here listening today, to Alex, and we did have this conversation in the lunchroom, the idea of consciousness and what does that mean, and can we actually attribute consciousness to something that we have invented and that doesn't come through the natural sort of way of nature. We extended it when we talked about the whole idea. We don't extend to a lot of things that are living in nature right now any rights. So to attribute something to
Very
rights
true.
that we have created, it's just another twist and turn in terms of, I think, the path that humanity is going down, and one that, it's interesting. We're talking about things that are predictive, and I think if there's anything about humanity that I've learned in my short time in understanding the history of us is we are not predictive. We have a lot of ideas, but where the expression goes, I think, we're busy planning life while reality is telling us otherwise, something to that effect. And so you can do that in your own life when you look at what you thought you were going to be at an important time, and where what you thought your interests were going to be, and how you've swayed in different relationships and work experiences and life experiences. Mm-hmm. And I think that's done individually, and I think that's done consciously as a species.
Right.
And I think that at the species level, we still don't know really where we're going. We kind of we fudge our way through a lot of things, and we go along and we figure it out as we go along. So the whole idea of where this is going to end up, I have no clue. And I don't think anybody does at this point in time.
Does.
I think there's a lot of speculative ideas out there right now, but I think that it's very possible that nothing about what we're thinking right now is where we're going to end up.
Right. I mean, I think that's true of a lot of technology, right? Who knew where Facebook was going to go, right? You're looking for high school friends.
So much.
And then people are being influenced to vote in a different way.
There's examples of things that have come about as things that we take as a natural part of our life, like Post-its as one example. I know that I said it before, but the idea of Post-its was an accidental outcome of something that it was supposed to be otherwise.
Right.
And there we go. Bang.
Right.
And that's what I mean about unpredictable, right?
Yeah. So, as we always end these podcasts, I'm going to ask you, Gary, what are you grateful for today?
Well, today in particular, I'm grateful for an amazing team at I-24 because our listeners don't know, but it was the conference for the ATSI group, which is the Association of Teleservices International. And it's one of the associations that we participate in their Award of Excellence program. And I couldn't be in Phoenix this week to attend. But I got text last night at the gala dinner when the awards were being presented that I-24 won our 18th consecutive ATSI Award of Excellence.
Oh, wow.
We also won the ATSI Award of Excellence Plus, which tests us on the outside of the outgoing side of our calls. And not only did we win the Plus, but we garnered top score this year, which is amazing.
That's
We're
incredible.
talking about call centers across North America. So very grateful for an amazing team.
That's incredible. Can you cue Daniel? Hi, Daniel. Daniel's our technical advisor. Can you cue clapping? Okay, we don't have a big setup. All right. Alex, what are you grateful for today?
Sure. I'm grateful certainly for the non-artificial intelligences I've surrounded myself with today and in my life. And, one of the great joys that I have in learning about things is getting to share that knowledge and hopefully demystify some things that make people nervous or make them uncomfortable. So I'm very grateful to have had this opportunity and hopefully to have given some aha moments to some people about how these systems work.
Aha. Definitely. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's just it.
Thank you so much for that.
And Nancy,
Yes.
what are you most grateful
I thought
for
you'd
today?
never ask. It's funny because I forgot that we're going to talk about this, but the thing that pops into my mind is I have a wedding to go to on Tuesday, and my nephew, who I've known him from before he was born, if that's at all possible. I knew of him before he was born. He's getting married. I mean, oh my God. And I'm excited to participate in that. And that's what I'm grateful for today. And of course, working with an incredible team. So we're going to end this podcast now, Gary. It's okay. It's okay. These podcasts do have to end. You're not even like crying or anything.
Not yet.
Okay. Okay, we'll let Gary go off and cry while I say thanks for joining us. This has been Beyond the Call, an I-24 podcast hosted by Gary Blair. We hope you enjoyed this episode on AI. Please subscribe and share wherever you've listened and leave a comment. We love your feedback and suggestions. To learn more about I-24, look for us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Did you know that I-24 is proudly 100% Canadian owned and operated? All our staff and call agents live and work in Canada. Not everyone can make that claim, so do your research. Be sure to visit our website at i24image.com to learn more about our call management services and multi-channel business solutions. I'm your producer and co-host, Nancy Brightman. Technical production, Daniel Moskovich. Until next month.
Bye. Canadian.